3 practices in, the things that we thought, that we did really well this summer, we did. Our strength staff has done a phenomenal job. These guys are in really good shape. We've certainly tested that. They've handled it really well. They're in good shape. They're strong, faster than we were last year, which is always the goal. And certainly for us, we talked about competition being the most important thing. And, for us, fall camp is all good on good. So every rep you're taking is 1s against 1s, 2s against 2s. So a lot of competition, a lot of really good competition. Really pleased with the way we've competed for 3 days. Certainly there's a lot of things we've got to get better at. Yesterday's the first day in pads. So, a lot of the fundamental things, striking with hands inside and, straining to win the gap at the end of the play, things like that, we've got to continue to work and get better at. But pleased with the effort. Execution, naturally better with some groups than others. A lot of bright spots out there, a lot of good, a lot of bad. The goal is, you get more good and less bad as you go on. So that's what we're working towards. But pleased with 3 days. Certainly not satisfied. There's a lot of work for us left to do. And, I expect them to continue to do it well.
We talked a lot about adding bulk and personnel and different mentality and stopping the run. As with the offensive line back as seasoned as it is, you're going to be able to tell a lot in these next few weeks how much progress. Does that make it easier to tell the progress there, or what do you see there?
Yeah, I think it does. I think, I feel like we've got a good offensive line. We've got a good group there. They're veteran. They've been around. So sometimes when you have a bunch of young guys and they haven't really played relative to the league, it's hard to tell. Is one side that good? Is the other side? But when you kind of know, all these guys have played in this league. And that's really where you compare it apples to apples. We have a group that's capable of playing really well. So yeah, I do think that you get to kind of see where you're at. Adding some of those guys has helped. Fitz was here in the spring, and we talked about him. But, Kyron Mims has been a good addition for us for sure. And Chase Edwards is a young guy that, we've been kind of pushing and challenging to come along and figure it out. And for 3 days, he's had a really good 3 days. The thing about challenging people, you can't make someone do something they don't want to do. And for him, man, he's made a decision that he's going to push himself like he hasn't before. And, the guy's got a lot of tools, and he's someone that we're looking forward to going out there and helping us, along with the usual suspects who've played a lot. So it's good to see those 2 guys in there who've gotten here, really Kyron in June, but Chase, who's, in my mind, really kind of come back a different person. And that's what we needed him to do.
Is Mims like the old school, just middle of the line run stop, or what is he if he is healthy and fulfills his potential?
Yeah, he's a unique player relative to our league. Inside, he's a big nose guard that 320 pounds. He's big, he's long, but he does have good. He can move. He can move laterally too. So a lot of those one gap movements and things that you try to do up front and try to divide the defense, he can do all that. It's not like he's strictly just a 2-gapper. So certainly, it's hard to be an interior pass rusher, especially when you're a shade or a 2. A shade or a 0. Those guys are getting doubled almost all the time. But he does collapse the pocket, which then lets your edge rushers work. So I think he can be he is going to be an every down player for us. But certainly he's someone that, we're excited about, because we do think that, we think that he can be a little bit different than kind of the other guys that we have. And that's what you're always looking for, unique pieces that add value to your team.
Coach Times, I was talking about his defense wanting it to be fast. How was it looking first few days, of course, going in?
Well, we do a lot of work in the spring and the summer so that you can get to day one, and day one, doesn't feel like, day one, right? We have a lot of these guys have been here. Our first, second, and third group, those guys have been here since June, all of them. So, and most of the rookies have. First, second, third group, most of them been here since January. So that is a good thing. The communication is really good. I think communication allows you to play fast. So that's been good. The thing that I like, is like I said, just kind of cutting the defensive line loose a little bit. We feel like we've got good players there. And I think we have an opportunity to allow them to, create negative plays, instead of just kind of sitting there and trying to react. And I think defense, I said it the other day in the press conference the first day before camp started, defenses can't be passive. You have to force the issue and make the offense screw it up. If you play a disciplined offense, they're not just going to give you the ball. You got to take it away. And so that's that's been the emphasis. And Coach Salgado, he doesn't call them turnovers, he calls them takeaways. And I like the term. I mean, it's an aggressive term. It's we're going to take it away, we're going to make it happen. And I think to play good defense, that's what you have to do.
When you were talking about Mills, you mentioned about finding a unique piece. Through these practices, have you noticed any other unique pieces as far as with players that kind of stood out?
Well, I think those are two guys that we hadn't talked about much. On offense, I think Caden Jensen has really, for 3 days, whatever that's worth, performed really well at tight end. He's got to fill a big void. We've had good wide tight ends the last couple years. I mean, the last six years, Johnny Lumpkin and Neil Johnson and all those guys in between. So, and Hunter Bergeron played really good for us. So I think Caden is one that's really, for the first 3 days, stepped up and played really well. You got some other guys that are young that are going to be really good players. I don't know they'll be ready this year. But, again, most of these guys, the Jaden Duggars of the world that are a little bit unique, they were here in spring. They're guys that are continuing to play at a really high level. Ashley Williams, some of those new guys that Carmicah Glass continues to show up day after day. So a lot of those guys that were here in spring, we kind of got to see it in the spring, and they're continuing to play well.
We didn't really ask you last week specifically, but it seems like it's not a very long list of guys who are not like in the spring, you normally have long lists because of surgeries. Or guys are not available. Is it still? Sounds good going into camp.
It has. I mean, knock on wood, right? It has been, and I think it's a testament to our strength staff preparing them, right? Being smart and working the right way this summer. It's that razor's edge, right? Of the work that pushes you to have that edge, but not overworking. And then secondly, it's your team doing the work. I mean, that's one of the most important things that we talk about here all the time is do the work. It's plain and simple. Like it takes what it takes, and we've all heard all that stuff, but I mean, the work has to get done. So I think those two things, it's the strength staff, and then it's our guys that are believing in it and doing it. Through the first 3 days, we had a couple cramps. That's nothing major, right? You expect that the first couple of days. Do have a couple, quarterbacks that are going to be out for a little bit. Adrian Lara pulled his hamstring pretty good. And then Dewanye Winfield's kind of having a little bit of trouble with his arm again. So, we're going to try to rest those guys and get them back. But those are the two right now that are going to miss a couple practices here going forward. So, been relatively healthy. It's 3 days in. Naturally there's a long way to go, but it certainly helps a whole lot whenever you get to camp and you've got pretty much everybody ready to go.
Anything clearing up in that third string quarterback position?
Daniel Bill's been pretty good. Yeah, he's going to be a pretty good player. I'm really impressed with the work he's done this summer, really in the spring. I mean, the guy showed up every day during the spring. Every single day we practiced, he drove from Baton Rouge to come here to sit in meetings and to watch practice, watch film, and it shows. He's got poise. He's got a lot of arm talent. He's a good athlete. He takes command of the huddle, and he goes out there. He makes good decisions. So he's going to be a really good player. And for him, it's always unfortunate when those other guys are kind of banged up for them. But for him, he's going to get a bunch of reps. We'll bring Sam Altman, back in and let him get some. We're going to go with 4 groups. Need 4 good quarterbacks that are healthy, ready to go. And Sam's had a good summer too. So Daniel so far has looked really good. I think Lunch does some good stuff for us. It's just, he's been a little bit limited kind of with his ability to throw it, with some of the arm stuff he's going through. So we just got to get that, we got to get it fixed. We got to make sure that we get him. I don't think it's surgical, right? We just got to figure it out, and we got to get him where he's, healthy and he can go out there and play the way he wants to. Because, it's hard when you have good players in a room and good competition. It's hard to win if you're not 100%, and, he hasn't been. So been really impressed with Daniel, though.
You mentioned Fitzgerald earlier. How does he fit in? First year coming from LSU, there's fitting in and then his skill set, like both. How does that look like?
I think you guys are talking to Fitz today, right? You'll see how easy he is to fit in. I mean, he's seamless when it comes to that. He's a great kid. He works really hard. I mean, he's a great personality. The guy never has a bad day, it doesn't look like. Smile on his face. He's happy to be here. And he's happy to get the opportunity here that it's what he was looking for. So as far as fitting in goes, I mean, that was pretty seamless really with him. I mean, and it's because of him. I mean, he doesn't talk a whole lot. You know, he's not one of those guys that's loud, and he's fun to be around. He's got a good personality, but when you buck with a chin strap, he works and he goes and he takes reps and it's full speed and he chases the ball and he does all those things you need to do. Schematically, you always look for position flexibility. You know, you've heard me say that a lot, right? He's a guy that, to me, in our odd stuff, he can play the 4-eye, he can play the 3 technique, he can play the nose. He's probably maybe a little bit smaller than what you want at nose, but he's really quick, especially if you're going to move it. But the guy is powerful. You know, I mean, he can play the nose, he can strike the center and play that. So he gives you flexibility all across the inside of the D line, which, you know, as the season goes on, right, and naturally attrition happens, you know, you don't want to get stuck that you've got, you know, your third boundary end in there because he's the boundary end, but he really might be your 8th, 9th best player. Well, you know, if you have a guy like Fitz and some of these other guys that you can move, well, now you instead of having your 8th best, you might have your 5th best guy in there, you know, which at the end of the season, that's just kind of the way it is sometimes. So that flexibility helps a lot. He's twitchy, he's quick, you know, he's powerful, he comes out of his hips, and like I said, the guy plays with tremendous effort. When you do that up front, you know, you got a chance to be pretty disruptive and cause some problems.
I know that we've heard that the scheme hasn't changed much on defense, and that kind of the philosophy has just changed a little bit. But at the linebacker position with Carmichael, are there decisions that have to be made, like how are you going to use this guy here? Because a couple of them are kind of could play both. Like what's going through y'all minds as a coaching staff with the linebackers in trying to figure out what everyone's going to do role wise in all.
Well, I mean, I think the thing that you're trying to do is you're trying to put them in that, you know, the Mike and the Will spot right now, right? You're trying to play there, but as you start building this thing with different personnel packages, right? You know, we play base and nickel. You know, you start getting dime packages and things like that where you're adding extra people. Well, you know, maybe it's your most athletic linebacker's only one in there. Well, I mean, that's what you're trying to figure out, who that guy is, right? Who can cover pass situations, 2-minute, things like that. Well, you want, you know, 2 guys that are a little bit more space players, right? More athletic. So, you know, right now it's trying to see what they can do within the normal operation of the defense. And as time goes, you start scheming, right? We don't game plan each other. We go out there and play our offense and our defense. As time goes on, you start scheming, you start actually game planning. Well, you do have different packages and you have different things. And maybe, you know, you have a different personnel grouping because you've got a high tendency to throw on this down, to run on this down, this situation. Well, you kind of package it that way. So for us, it's their normal operation within the defense. Hey, you know, if you got to go play every snap at this spot, can you go do it? And hopefully you got a bunch of guys that can, right? And you got to figure out who's doing it the best. But, you know, we got good pieces in there. You know, Caleb Cabote's a guy that's been here a long time. I mean, he's poised to get ready to go out there and play. Caleb Edwards, talked about him. You know, and these young guys have come in here. I mean, they're going to be good when their time comes. But, you know, those are the main guys that are in the mix there.